I have a freedom of speech question. There have been some new discussions in this town about how accommodating private businesses should be to groups that promote some kind of hate theology. Recently, there was a deplorable ball called Deplorable Ball at the National Press Club the day before President Trump's inauguration. I'm a member of the National Press Club, and there was a big debate among members about whether we should rent space to this organization. We receive revenue by being a private event space in addition to a gathering place for journalists. Many journalists were opposed to it, but then other journalists were like, we are the press, we are for freedom of speech. We cannot be ones to curtail it. We need to trust to the people to be able to hear these kinds of speech and make decisions for themselves about what they want to associate with and what they don't. But I also recognize that historically, freedom of speech in this country has been conceptualized by white men and is still in journalism today overrepresented by white men. So I would really like to hear your thoughts on that balance that we find in our society, especially right now.
I think it's absolute nonsense and a cop-out that private businesses want to talk about freedom of speech. The point of being a private business is that you can make decisions about the kinds of things that you're going to promote and support. Freedom of speech exists whether or not the Deplorable is held at your venue. That was a financial decision. The organization wanted to make money. Let's not use freedom of speech as the banner for what's happening there. I personally run into this a lot because of this thing I did recently. And so for those who don't know, I had a book with Simon & Schuster, and Simon & Schuster is publishing Milo Yiannopoulos, who is a racist hate monger. And I didn't want to publish with a company that was willing to give him $250,000 to promote hatred. And it's not about the freedom of speech, because he is welcome to his ideas and he's welcome to speak about them and share them, but it doesn't mean he's entitled to $250,000. And he's not entitled to publish with a major publishing house. And I think that people are like, oh, we should hear all sides, but racism is not a side. Racism is not an opinion. And so I think that I think our rights are important. I believe in the Constitution, and I believe in rights, but it's always white men that are crying about their rights while they sit silently while the rights of people of color and the rights of women are trampled over and over-legislated every single day. And so I want to have more nuanced conversations, and I think freedom of speech is sacrosanct, but business is not the place where we should be litigating freedom of speech.
Well, I'm a Berkeley graduate, and the whole Milo Yiannopoulos thing hit Berkeley and became a big national thing when the students and possibly others shut that event down. And for all the reasons that Roxanne said, it's in the context that it's not about business, which was your question, but in the context of places that are supposed to be about free speech, like the university. You run into this issue where it is always about sort of a rhetoric of uniform access to freedom of speech. So yes, we can have Nazis on campus, but then we can have everybody else on campus too. But I'm proud of those Berkeley students. I was a Berkeley student myself. When I was a Berkeley student, I was doing those types of things also. And I think the point there is that freedom of speech, like everything else in this society, applies differently, with different kinds of access, different kinds of structural inequalities impeding that. And going out and marching, protesting, presenting different voices that can overshadow the voices that we object to is a part of what freedom of speech is supposed to be in American society. So freedom of speech doesn't preclude fighting over the freedom of speech, and that's what we need to also do as well. That we really are in a time where these types of battles are going to happen more and more often. Especially if certain kinds of legislation gets enacted allowing people to discriminate. So it's going to be up to us to fight for that right to be just as vocal as those who are given $250,000 and a corporate platform.